welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review, folks. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson. This is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi, guys.
And tonight we will be reviewing the Hammer film titled Captain Kronos, the Vampire Hunter, that was made or released in 1974.
Exactly.
So, what do you think?
Well, wait a minute. Yeah, Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, that's the full name of it, released in 1974. It actually said it was belatedly released in 74, so it might have been made a couple of years earlier.
Yeah, so...
But wait a minute, I'm talking. Just for once, let me finish the sentence.
I was just going to say that I was incorrect about the... it was made in 1974.
That was release date.
It was just the release date.
Yeah, because I don't know when it was actually made. I couldn't find anything on it. But it was made maybe a year or two earlier. It had a bit of trouble with its rating, I believe.
Ah.
But see, back in those days, censorship was a bit tighter. And because of the action in it, some of the action, the violence, and the sexual subtext of it, and a bit of nudity and whatever, it was hard to get accepted in the mainstream theatres. I think that's why it didn't have a big run, and hence I cannot find too much in the way of box office figures.
I gotta admit though, it had, it didn't have, I didn't see too much in the way of nudity. I mean,
it was enough for its time. This is what I'm saying. This was 1970s.
I mean, unlike other Hammer films, which did a little bit more showy stuff, especially with women, considering.
I'm talking about censorship. 50 years ago, censorship was different to that it is today, okay? Okay, all right?
I know.
And the rules and laws have relaxed a little bit.
I know.
However, for its day, it's sort of like Psycho. It was shocking, horror, blah, blah, blah. Today, it's just a movie. Even though it's a good movie.
It is a good movie.
The point is that we've been desensitised to the violence.
True.
And that sort of thing. So, and the same as this, we've been desensitised to the sex scene, so the sex scenes get a bit more graphic nowadays.
Yeah.
Yep.
And back then, the 70s, especially the 70s, they practically did all the showy, feely stuff. I mean, until the 80s, they kind of discontinued
you're
that.
Missing something here. A lot of the nudie, sexual movies back in those days went to art house. They didn't go mainstream.
Yeah.
Okay. Like Andy Warhol movies, probably never saw
the light of day.
Front door of a mainstream theatre back in those days.
Yeah.
They went all art house.
And I imagine the same could be said for some of Roger Corman's stuff. I mean, in the 80s, not the 70s,
Well, you did the teenage horror sort of...
Yeah, that's it.
Well, some of those things, might have made it in more of an art housey stuff, because it wasn't actually... Or the drive-in theatre circuit.
Exactly.
Anyway, irrespective. Okay, so anyway, this movie is titled... whatever, Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, yada, 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 is a swashbuckling action horror film.
Nice.
It's enough to please anybody. Okay?
Yeah, and it's probably like an early Blade comic book type superhero.
It didn't become a comic book.
Yeah, after this movie was released, they didn't get around to making sequels or anything like that.
They were thinking about a sequel, but because had trouble at theatres, and the company went into financial difficulties and subsequently closed.
Yeah. Anyway, so they made some comics to please the small mass of people.
Yeah, but they were supposed to be serialised in movies. Mm-hmm. This was the first of the movies. That's why I'm off to do some more adventures at the end of the movie, and that would have rolled on to the next movie, like a segue. And it didn't happen because Hammer Films went into liquidation or closed its doors due to financial difficulties.
Yeah,
anyway.
It's just like, I think the only Hammer franchises they focused on back then was either the Frankenstein franchise or the Dracula ones, and there were some of them that continued on, but others just were standalone movies here and there.
Well, they often did that.
Which is not too bad.
Hammer Films made a lot of movies. You're just mentioning Dracula and Frankenstein. They did a lot of standalone movies. They did horror and ordinary movies as well, and they had TV shows at... oh, crikey, Hammer House of Horror, something or other. They had something else. I just can't remember at the moment. But they did ordinary movies as well.
Yeah, I certainly like their...
Can we actually review this movie?
I just want to say, I like this one because it like a lot of the Hammer movies they've done, they often change the subtext or the details about vampire folklore a little bit.
They bend it around to make it fit the movie.
Yeah.
Now, can I go through my usual stuff now?
Yes.
Okay, produced by Brian Clemens and Albert Fennell on behalf of Hammer Film Productions. Now, directed by Brian Clemens. This is, I think, one and only directing jobs. He used to produce movies and that sort of stuff. I don't think he wrote for them, but he didn't actually do any directing apart from this movie.
That's a shame.
So, like I said, he wrote this one as well. Yeah, can't say too much more about that part. Moving right along, budget was £160,000, I would presume back in those days. Box office unknown, probably had a very, very limited run because of its R rating and whatever. But it subsequently made ground, becoming a cult-based movie, I believe, in the end, because people wanted to see it, and it just went on and on and on.
Let me jump in just for a minute,
carry
guys.
on.
I found out that it was actually filmed in 1972. Now that I just found out, so it took probably 2 years to get released.
Well, yeah, probably nobody wanted it, and it's one of the better movies they made. Interesting.
Well, it's a mixture. That's why it was so cool about it.
Anyway. No, it was released, blah, 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 blah. It was intended to be the first in the series focused on the title character and his companions. And obviously it didn't work because it was R-rated. I wouldn't say sexually explicit by today's standards, but you did see a bit of skin back in those days. And for the genteel people who used to go see the mainstream theatres, movies, it was probably pushing the boundaries just a tad for those days, and it didn't. And it probably made the rounds of the art house. Maybe, I don't know how it was done. Anyway, moving right along onto the actors. There's quite a few actors in this movie, but I kept it down to a short list.
Me too.
Horst Janson plays Captain Kronos. Tall, good-looking blonde guy with blue eyes, all the bit your action hero, Errol Flynn, and all these other guys eat your heart out. Now, here's something
interesting.
Horst is German, and I believe he speaks English.
Well,
No, because I was watching the movie, he was mouthing the words, and they all looked right. However, his voice was overdubbed by a person called Julian Holloway, probably because he had a
accent.
Horst may have had a very heavy German accent, being a German.
And this is
German,
supposed to be
person,
based in English.
Based in England, yeah. So they didn't want we will,
because he's supposed to be. His character is a English soldier just returned from war, and
exactly
he's
right.
now turned into a vampire hunter.
And having a German accent wouldn't actually add anything to the role. So they probably put an English voiceover. But the timing, the syncing of it was quite good. I was looking at it and saying, you know what? They did a couple of shots where they actually had him talking without his face in the shot. But the other times his face was in shot, the syncing was perfect.
I agree.
Yeah. So
and he doesn't talk very much in this. He's
very broody type.
He's a silent type guy.
Silent type. But when he spoke, he spoke well. But the point is, like I said, the syncing of those words he spoke, when the camera was on his face, you couldn't have picked it. So that was really, really good job for the audio post-edit. Anyway, here we go. Now, Julian Holloway. Now, John Carter plays his offsider, Professor Hieronymus Grost. If the English, why got his European names? I've got no idea. Caroline Munro plays Carla, a pretty gypsy girl who he finds in the stocks there for being naughty.
Caroline is so beautiful.
She's a beautiful girl and very much a creature of her time.
Yeah, that's what I like about her. I like the fact that she's what would you describe her? You know, not her character, or a role, but what herself.
Hubba. No.
No, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I just would have described her. I'm not sure if I should use the word Amazon or.
No, she wasn't Amazon. She was just a very strong personality. Yeah, she really worked good in this movie.
And Mike's not going to agree with me on this one, but I often see her as a Catherine Zeta-Jones of the time back then.
Okay.
Because she's really that beautiful and...
No, it's a very attractive girl.
Very attractive.
Lady, yeah. It had lovely face, nice bod, nice hair, can act. Yeah, it does help in doing a movie.
She also was a Bond girl in... what was it called? Which one was it?
I can't remember.
I think it was not...
One of them.
The Spy Who Loves Me. Yeah,
right,
that's
whatever.
It.
She was in one of those. And she's been sort of active and semi-active even up till now, wasn't she?
What?
Even she's still active.
She's still,
not as much.
Not as much.
She's
but she's been in a friend of mine's film called House of the Gorgon.
Yeah, by Joshua Kennedy, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good one to watch. I mean, we won't review that one necessarily, but Joshua Kennedy does a good line of independent films. So if you want to sort of go online and have a look and see what he's doing, you might want to buy a couple to help him out.
You may have seen me do a review on him doing his Dracula 2000 AD one.
That's right, we did, yeah. But he's done lots of other movies. House of Gorgon, Octopus, was it?
Yeah, and he let me see, did his own airport type movie.
Now these are independent movies and very, very low budget. So come on, guys. If you have a look at it and then you say, "Oh, it's a bit cheesy," that's okay. He's still independent and he's doing it on a very limited budget. You can turn if you can turn a hallway into an airplane, so be it. Do it.
I got to admit, it was very clever, and I thought the special effects were pretty good for awesome
a low budget.
For a low budget.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this.
Moving right along. Okay, John Carson plays Dr. Marcus. Shane Bryant plays Paul Durward. Lois Dane plays Sarah Durward, and Wanda Ventham plays Lady Durward.
Yeah,
they're the naughty people in this movie.
Yeah, Wanda. She's actually the mother to that new modern version of Sherlock Holmes. Benedict Cumberbatch. She is his mum.
Didn't know that.
Well, now you know. I was going to. Now you know.
Well,
and she also made an appearance in season 3 in Sherlock Holmes as his mum in that movie TV show too.
Anyway, keeping all the family. Now, okay, seeing as though you like to talk, you'll take over now.
Oh yes. So the story begins with two girls in the woods, braiding each other's hair. The girly stuff. All girly stuff. And one of them says...
The teenagers.
Yeah. And one of them decides to go off and get some flowers to put in her friend's hair. And while she's away, someone, unknown person approaches the girl. And she sees him and she looks frightened at first. And then she starts smiling. And and then something wicked happens to her. And Dr. Marcus, who happened to be in the vicinity, approaches the girl and sees that somehow she's aged quite a bit.
Really lots. She went from, say, 16 years old to about 80 years old in a matter of moments.
And she croaks, right?
Old age, yeah.
Anyway, then title card appears. Captain Kronos, the Vampire Hunter. And we see the man arrive on his horse and
his little man, Grost in his wagon behind him carrying their goodies.
Yeah, and they come across, what's her name?
Carla,
and she's in the stocks, I think.
Stocks, yeah. You put your head and your hands through it, and they'll lock you in there. People throw the salad bar at you and different things.
Yeah, if you're feeling really guilty for doing something, and her guilty...
not feeling guilty, when you are found to be guilty.
Okay, you're found guilty. And her crime was that she was dancing on Sunday. Not a really big crime, but probably back then.
For them it was, at that little town. They took their religion seriously.
Yeah.
By the way, this is probably based back 100 years earlier or something or other too, so yeah.
Yeah. Kronos releases her, and she's obliging to him, and she decides to come along with them.
Well, it's had nothing to hold her back there, yeah.
Yeah, no kin or whatever.
Nothing, so she goes along for the ride, gets on the wagon and goes with them. he saved her.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't get anything else.
Yeah, and there's an awesome chemistry between her and him.
Yeah,
from a sexual point of view.
Well, they both look good. They both look at each other with those bedroom eyes,
Yeah, I gotta admit, the actor who plays Kronos, what's his name?
Horst.
Yeah. He's really attractive in this.
He's that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan race sort of stuff. He looks really good. I mean, he's about 83 now, and he still looks pretty damn good. A bit wrinkly and stuff, but he's. So he's holding his age well, and he's not falling apart too much.
Yeah. Anyway, so. They soon arrive at Dr. Marcus's place, and Dr. Marcus reports about, several girls are being brutally dying of old age. They start off young, and then the next minute they're old. And Professor Grost explains that this is the work of vampires, and unlike ordinary vampires where they're sucked of blood, they're actually drained of youth.
Yeah, they're sucking the life out of them. Just like lawyers and accountants do. Or lawyers, more so. Your divorce lawyers, they suck the life out of you. And everything else. Yeah,
each of the girls had a crucifix on them, and Dr. Gross also has a specific theory about this. He says that these women were not of their... their faith wasn't strong. Having a crucifix around your neck and not totally believing doesn't protect you.
Yeah. That's what it said. Which makes sense. Yeah.
And so they're mesmerised or hypnotised by
their antagonist, whoever it is. Mm-hmm. We don't know who the antagonist is yet. So.
Yeah, he remains a cloaked figure we don't know the identity of.
I mean, it could be me. No, I need a tarpole and I'm on the chubby side. But anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, another girl gets killed in the... two girls, I should mention, got killed. One of them gets killed walking through the forest, and another one who happens to be in chapel.
Yeah, actually, this vampire person can go into churches and chapels and stuff. That's a bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Mike, what is a church these days? It's a building, after all.
Yeah, no. It is not a building. Back in those, I don't know about some of the spin-off churches, but Catholic Church, Anglican Church, whatever, they'll actually bless the building and consecrate the building and stuff to make it a church, and then they leave it, they'll unbless it, somehow or other they do some other prayers to decommission it.
True.
So it is really a house of God in all sense, because it's been prayed over and blessed and different things, and so back in those days, a vampire technically couldn't walk in there. And, lo and behold, here's one for you. Most vampires, if you go by the books, can't come into your place, house, building, whatever, unless you invite them in.
Yeah, anyway. And considering the church is an open place for anyone.
You still can't cross the threshold unless they're invited in.
True.
There you go. Bit of history for you, folks. Yeah.
Well, in this case, in this movie...
He's already in there.
He's already in there, and he's allowed to enter anywhere in this movie.
Or he or she. We don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, so back into the story. Yeah. So they come up with some sets of plans of how to track down the vampire. They bury dead toads into the underground, under the
They put little dead toads, little wooden boxes.
Yeah, and buried them.
And... sometime later, next day, when they think, when after murder was committed, they go and check these boxes. And the theory is that just as the vampire can take life, if it comes past something that's already dead, it can resurrect it. It'll take life from the vampire. Yeah. And lo and behold, one of the toads came back to life, which proved their theory. Yes, we are dealing with a vampire.
Yeah, and so anyway, they noticed that there was a carriage that's markings on the ground, which indicate that maybe a coach or a wagon might have been in the vicinity.
Exactly.
And this could be the getaway vehicle too that said
something along those lines
to the vampire. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they eventually had to split up because the carriage came to a crossroads, and there was no
And for some reason, they couldn't see which way the tracks went.
Yeah.
He's not a very good soldier if he can't track a coach going through mud.
Yeah.
Anyway, but maybe the ground's a tad more solid there and you just couldn't see which way the carriage went. I do.
The one direction leads to a town and a tavern, I think, or, a bar. And the other one way may lead to a sort of mansion that where the
went over the hill towards someone's property, yes.
Yeah, so Marcus and Kronos, they split up. Kronos went in one direction, and Marcus went the other direction. Or he said he was going to stick around and
see if he can find some stuff out.
But I think he goes on his merry way to find his own ideas about maybe who might be the vampire is.
Perchance.
So he visits the Sarah and her brother.
Bugglelugs.
Paul Durward. And he asks them a few questions, like how their mother is, Lady Durward, and she was unwell. She was in a carriage earlier where she looks like she's practically aged.
Mummy looked like a mummy. How's that?
Yeah.
Aha.
And he does. Marcus also encounters a vampire in the woods, but we don't know what happens to him. We just assume the worst.
Assume that he got accosted. How's that?
Yeah, he has blood on his lip, and he licked the blood a little bit. I think dabbing
throughout this. And that was a telltale sign if you get your blood, your life sucked out. If you had your life sucked out of you by a vampire, what you'd do, you'd actually have little blood come on your lips.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what the story said.
Anyway, meanwhile, the carriage driver that belongs to the Durwards, he approaches the people in the tavern, and he asks three men to that he'll pay them amount of money to get rid of Captain Kronos
and his little cider.
Yeah, they kind of say some nasty things to Professor Grost because
Grost is a hunchback, and just a bit like Igor, but not quite as bad.
Yeah, he's a nice man. That's all I can say.
Very nice, yes.
And he doesn't deserve this ill treatment.
What's got your back up, Punchy? It's not a very nice thing to say to a hunchback. No.
Yeah, and fortunately, Kronos gives them a taste of their own medicine by calling them names and then slashing their throats.
Within a couple of seconds, they're all dead on the floor.
Yeah.
And he doesn't ruffle a hair.
He then asks the tavern owner, have you seen a carriage or coach or wagon recently? And they say, no carriages or coaches arrived around here recently.
Nah.
Liar.
Pants on fire.
But then again, he probably wasn't looking outside the window for any carriages.
He would have known.
But he would know.
He was scared of them.
Yeah. They go back to Marcus's house, and there Professor Gross is a little sad that these guys were picking on his appearance. And Carol says that her mother said that beauty fades in the end, but a kind soul lasts forever.
Yes.
And
Kronos says something about
Yeah, he says, wise woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Grost realised. And did Kronos say something about...
He says, your body was blessed by God, to help me rid the world of these vampire creatures.
Yeah, exactly right, yeah.
And this kind of sets him at ease, I guess.
It does, yeah, somewhat.
Anyway, and they set up their next trap of trying to find, likely, where the vampire might strike next. So they set up this special bell system where they put some bells on these a long ribbon and attach it to trees, limbs,
so if anyone goes
like
past there, a person, kangaroo, moo cow.
Yeah, of course we see a woman walking through the woods and
getting some eggs or something. Eggs or mushrooms?
I think it was eggs. I think
carrying a basket of eggs. Yeah, I think.
And you got to admit, I like it how Captain Kronos he kind of jumps really fast when he's.
Oh, he moves. When he gets alerted to something and he has to move. One second he's here, and the next second he's gone somewhere else. How the hell did he do that?
Yeah. And anyway, eventually the woman gets accosted by or sucked her. She gets attacked by a vampire bat.
Yes.
And that bat eventually disappears, and we're left with is a dead woman.
Yes. And a lot of broken eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget the eggs.
Yeah. Later that night, Kronos and Carol are making out or having a bit of
Carla.
Carla. Carla. Sorry.
Your grandmother's name was Amelia Carla, okay? It's Carla, okay?
Yeah. Anyway, they make out, and he tells her a bit of his past, that his mum and sister became vampires when he was off at war, and he got bitten, but he survived.
Yeah,
but we don't know the full story of how that happened how he maintained humanity.
He may not have got a good bite on him. But just enough to scar him, so he had to kill his mother and his sister.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know how he feels.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Anyway, while this is happening, Dr. Marcus notices his hairline starting to be coloured.
Yeah, he had a bit of grey around his temples.
There was grey around his
and
hair.
His skin was starting to look a bit younger. Oops.
He then approaches Kronos and says that he's starting to look younger, and his teeth have gotten younger.
And his canine teeth started to grow a little bit. Ooh, that's a telltale sign.
As he's about to probably bite him, luckily Mr. Kronos was able to smash him in the face.
Yeah, he just sort of taking a dentist, taking his fangs out.
Good point.
Yeah,
quickly, Kronos and Grost, they quickly tie him to a chair and try to kill him.
And vampires are hard to kill, honestly.
They try a steak first, doesn't do anything.
A sausage would have been better, maybe.
They tried to hang him, another one.
He wasn't well hung, no.
And they tried to use, I guess, a torch or a little bit of fire to burn him.
But they didn't get a chance because he died.
Yeah, for some reason, Kronos, he actually placed his hand on his chest, and he was wearing
they were struggling, a
steel crucifix around his knees.
They went sideways, and when he was wrestling with him, he pushed the crucifix, one of the side arms, and it went straight into his chest, and the iron in the metal killed him. So you could kill a vampire with iron stroke steel.
While this is happening, now they've got the possible weapon against the vampire. Now they have to try to find something big enough to use against the vampire. But while this is happening, someone who's a blacksmith, I think, who's living not too far from Dr. Marcus, sees what occurred and assumed that they killed him, Dr. Marcus, unmercifully.
Well, they did kill him, but Dr. Marcus wanted to be killed. They thought they killed him for other reasons.
Yeah, as I've pointed out to you several times in the past, guys, whenever a stranger comes to town, especially in these movies, they would assume that these people are up to no good. So they try to form a lynch mob and try to kick their butts. While Kronos and Dr. Grost are collecting a very big cross, in a graveyard that has steel on it.
Yes, a steel brace in the back of it. So they took the cross down and took the steel off it to forge it into a sword, so Kronos could use it to slay the vampire.
Yeah, before that happens, the bunch of the men from the town, they start to come upon Captain Kronos, and he takes out his sword. One of them looks like a samurai sword. It had a very interesting hilt on it, and the other one looked like an ordinary saber.
Yeah, so had two. So he's been around, hasn't he? Yeah.
So he quickly makes quick work of the men. He doesn't kill them.
No, he just disarms them. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a very good swordsman.
Because the whole point of this is not to hurt them.
Actually, you did a bit of sword play at fencing classes.
Yeah.
I think it was fine with the other guy. Was that real? Do you reckon that was real just choreography or real sword movements?
I think so. I think that's real sword movements.
Yeah, it looked real to me. Yeah.
They would hire an armourer or a sword choreographer to coordinate the actors.
Because some movies you see they run around with swords and stuff. They're not actually doing the moves properly, but these guys look like they're doing it properly.
Yeah, sometimes they add a new one just to make sure it looks authentic enough.
Yeah,
because this is old stuff sometimes. Anyway, they then go back to the blacksmiths and they go ahead and Professor Grost begins to start turning the cross into a sword. and it looks really good. And as he approaches Captain Kronos with his sword, he says, "A sword fit for a king." And Kronos says, "Or a Kronos."
Yes, aha. See,
Yeah.
he's not pretentious, is he?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Meanwhile, our potential vampire, he's finally comes across a cabin in the woods with one of the final country girls, and he kills her, along with her father, who was walking through the woods.
He got run by a coach.
And her brother, who happened to be, with her at the time.
Yeah, he got killed. Yeah, he couldn't run too fast. He had
a walking stick.
Yeah, crutches or whatever. Yeah.
But luckily enough, Grost was able to throw the last dead frog underneath the carriage, and this is where we assume that the vampire is inside the coach.
Yes,
and
because the toad came back to life. Aha.
Yeah, indicating that it's none other than the family, possibly, of the Durward.
Durwards.
Yeah. So their unexpected vampire is living there. So then,
but it's one of them, or all of them. Who knows? We don't know yet.
Kronos quickly prepares. He starts putting garlic flowers on his arms and marking his throat with X's. And
little on his throat so the vampire won't be able to go, "Oh, munchy, munchy."
Yeah, and they prepare what's it? Carla, because she's going to be the bait.
Yeah, is he going to sort of distract them while Kronos and Grost get into the mansion to try solve the mystery and take on the vampire?
Yeah, he's given the sword, and they added a special mirror.
Yeah, a highly polished piece of
metal,
steel, whatever, on the sword, so he can use it as a reflector. Yeah, like a mirror.
So he can use that. So he can kind of let the vampire hypnotize himself using.
Well, yeah, we use it. We just get on with it.
Anyway, back to the story. Carol goes to the mansion. She pretends to be a woman who ran away from home because
her father wanted to marry somebody she's in love.
Yeah, but when she's in love with someone else.
Yeah,
and they offered to let her stay the night, which they do.
They were very nice people. Yeah,
and then they turn in for the night, and then our unexpected vampire slowly walks down the stairs. And while this is happening, Kronos and Grost were able to knock down the carriage driver because he was sort of an accomplice to the vampire.
I think he knew everything was going on with Mummy Dear.
Yeah, I think he does.
I don't think. We just said Mummy Dear, didn't we?
No, you didn't. You just made it.
I said Mummy Dear. Okay, it's going to come out now anyway.
Yeah, somehow. It turns out to be the mother, Lady Durward, who's the vampire.
And her children didn't know anything about it.
They then see their mother and they're shocked how...
You look so young and beautiful you are.
And assume, how is this possible and all this stuff, when actually she's been wearing a fake mask on her face.
Make it look old?
Yeah. Kronos discovers the mask. He kind of crashes into a room and sees the mask. It looks very...
old and ancient, like a mummy.
Yeah.
Mummy's mask.
And Lady Durward explains to her children that while her side of the family has many secrets,
witchcraft and other things, and vampirism and groovy stuff.
And she goes on to say that she plans on using these dead girls who help make her young husband come back to life.
Yeah, he got killed about 7 years earlier?
Yeah, during a plague of sorts.
Yeah, he died of some sort of plague that was going through the area, and he died, and he couldn't be saved by Dr. Marcus, who they actually, mother sort of blamed for his death.
Yeah, I think that Marcus's turning into a vampire was caused by her, I think.
Oh, shit,
my
well,
theory.
there's nobody else.
My theory,
there was
anyway.
no one else. Mm-hmm. There's only one vampire there.
Yeah, true.
Mummy Dearest.
Yeah, she then tells her children that they'll forget everything they just see, sort of thing, and she makes a plan to kill the final girl. But luckily enough, Kronos appears, and he was able to hypnotize the Lady Durward and fence with Lord Durward,
who just popped in out of his grave. So
they begin to
pox-ridden face and everything else.
Yeah, and so they sword fight or fence, if that's the word.
Yeah, that's not fence. Yeah, sword fight, dance together. But,
of course. While he's fighting, Lord Durward didn't realize that the sword is actually made of steel, which I always thought, isn't that what all swords are made of?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't make swords, okay? I always thought that all swords were made out of steel, but I'm thinking about nowadays swords. They might have used something like bronze or something years ago, or something else, some sort of alloy or something rather when they're making swords. So, but this one's steel.
Yeah.
Well, iron and steel comes to the same sort of thing. Iron ore. Yeah.
Of course, once he realized the sword is made of steel and that leaves him a mark or two, like a few blood stains, because he's shocked to find that this will lead to his downfall and all that stuff.
Yeah, like a hot knife through a vampire.
Anyway, while he's fighting, he knocks the sword out of his way, and Kronos had to use his bare hands to avoid getting stabbed, which is bloody.
That hurt his hands a bit.
And he had to use another sword to stab him a couple of times, but as we all know, this won't help his case. Luckily, Professor Grost comes in and throws him his good sword and stabs him
just in time
before he stabs him.
When Lord Durward was lunging forward, Kronos grabbed the sword and went straight into his chest.
Yeah.
And there was lots of cheering and... No, sorry.
Yeah, Lady Durward awakens from her and finds her husband dead, and you see a bit of trickle of red blood dripping down her eyeball. Or not her eyeball.
Yeah, well, you're right, yeah.
Hinting that she was crying blood tears.
And the funny part is, hubby falls on the ground and dies, and she staggers over there.
And tries to...
And... Did she die? Just
dies. She just gets stabbed too, and then the blood appears on her children's face, and her daughter screams, and they're kind of broken the trance over all three.
The shock over it, and the camera comes back to the two dead bodies.
Yeah, they're all
skeletons.
Yeah, and the mask upstairs crumbles to dust, like they did.
Well, yeah, the magic has been broken. Whatever.
Yeah, and Carol was also Carla was also in a trance too.
And she was untranced.
And so she leaves with Kronos and Professor Grost. I don't know why, but Kronos left the sword behind. I don't know why.
Well, he didn't. Well, maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he preferred his normal swords. Mm-hmm. Okay. He had two already.
Yeah.
If he had 3 arms, he might have had a third sword. Okay?
I just mean that if he encountered another vampire that had a steel weakness, wouldn't that be
I would have taken the sword.
Yeah.
But it's a throwaway society nowadays. That probably was way back then as well.
Anyway, the next morning, I think, he wishes his final farewell to the long-dead Marcus, and says his goodbyes to Carla. And she says, where are you going to go and all that stuff? And he says, anywhere.
Anywhere they need me to fight
evil.
Yeah, just like Superman.
Yeah, and he remarks that on lonely nights, he'll think of her. And the same could be said for her.
It's the same thing, as will I.
And so they ride off into the
sunset.
Or into the sunrise.
Whatever.
At the end.
Yay. Yeah.
I think it's an awesome movie. I always think all of Hammer films, vampire movies are awesome.
I've always liked Hammer. For this, hang on. I'm going to turn around. Hammer movies... compared to American movies, the same type of movies, I would say America, like Universal Studios did Frankenstein and Dracula's really, really good. That sort of stuff. And Hammer was always just a tad not quite as good. However, where Hammer made up for it, they did a lot of location shoots. They didn't say, we'll all do it on a soundstage. They didn't have matte painters all over the place doing stuff. They didn't have carpenters building stuff. They don't actually go to an old mansion and film in an old mansion. They go to an old town and film in an old town. They go, a lot of it was done, maybe not all of it, but the majority of it was done on location. And to me, it gave it a different sense of reality. Because you look at something like a Dracula movie when he's walking up the stairway there, coming to an archway, you can see it's a matte painting in front of him. And that sort of stuff. You didn't have that at Hammer because there was a follow-through into the next room. Yeah. So, it had depth. It had more depth in the filming.
Yeah. So, our leading lady, the Caroline...
Caroline Munro, yeah.
Yeah, this is she did Dracula A.D. the 1972 version.
Yeah,
This is her second, vampire movie that she did, and the final one, it would seem, and all that stuff.
Well, there you go then.
So
but she has been active, even now she's doing still a bit of acting, so as Horst is as well. Now, here we go. Now, not much on critiques here, so
okay.
only a little bit. So, All Movie called the film one of the last great Hammer film productions. In later years, the film became a cult classic.
Sweet.
Largely because of its unusual mix of supernatural horror and swashbuckling action. So you get a lot of horror movies back in those days, didn't necessarily have a lot of action in it. And he has a lot of action movies there, have a bit of horror or supernatural and gets pushed aside a bit, but they got the blend pretty good.
Yeah, apart from the odd creep show type comic book back then, they also had the odd historic type, superhero here and there. Like this one.
Anyway, that's it. Now when I talked about those sequels,
like Conan the Barbarian was sort of a historic type, comic book hero years ago.
Now,
Go on.
There we go. And like I said earlier before we started, I mean, it was supposed to launch. This movie was supposed to launch a series of new Hammer film productions. But in the 1970s, the studio developed financial issues and had to close down.
Damn.
So they had an idea to do several more movies like this, following the adventures of Captain Kronos and his little pals or whatever. There was a novel written by Guy Adams under the title Kronos and was published in 2011. Now, there was comic book adaptations. The House of Hammer, it was written in that 76, 77 period. Hammer's Halls of Horror, that was 78. Captain Kronos Vampire Hunters, that was done about, current, almost 2017, 2018. Yeah, so he's still popular.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting
so
one.
That's the whole point. He came over something a little bit different back then, and the story in the movie is still pretty good.
Well, considering the sources of where, vampire source material Hammer did, most of their other vampire movies, they dabbled with just a professor like Van Helsing trying to track down the vampires.
Have got a crucifix, I've got some garlic. Boo, go away. It doesn't,
But in this case, they did a... I guess it was a little bit more different. Instead of just a professor.
It's nice to have a bit of action in the supernatural. Look at Hansel and Gretel and Vampire Hunters or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Now that was a good
Well,
movie.
Witch Hunters.
Witch Hunters, sorry, yeah. Witch Hunters?
Yeah, Witch Hunters.
Okay, whatever, Witch Hunters. And that was a good movie.
Well, it's Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel deal with witches, yada, yada, yada.
No, I'm talking about the movie.
I know.
Yeah, they came there. I thought not very... it was witchcraft, wasn't it? Yeah. I haven't seen it for a couple of years. Yeah, I've seen so many movies, so that had action, and that's what you want. I mean, it's really good to see a nice slow-moving drama horror type thing too. If you got the suspense building up, and you're sitting on the end of your seat waiting for the next. Ooh. Yeah, that sort of thing. But if you're going to have an ordinary one, throw a bit of action into it. It actually gives another way to keep people interested.
Totally.
Yeah.
I do think this is an awesome movie. I like the fact,
think it's great.
And I wish it was given the right presentation.
Well,
it was
rated as an R-rated movie because of the violence in it. There was a bit of violence in it, and not based on today's, but they thought it was a little bit violent for its day. And the sex and the nudity.
It was tasteful nudity.
It was. I think it was done in good taste, and it was relevant, and it worked okay, and it wasn't over the top. But 50 years ago, the censorship laws were a bit different. Like I said, Andy Warhol stuff never made it to a real cinema. It went all art house.
True.
They couldn't get anywhere near a mainstream theatre because it was sex, male, female, full frontal. Yeah. I mean, the average audience wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah, it would have been a bit of terrible if we saw a lot more of men's parts.
You did in Andy Warhol movies. I'm saying you saw everything, and that's why it's so.
Yeah,
art house movies had I wouldn't say a select clientele, but people who went to the art house movies couldn't complain about the content.
Yeah.
Because this is the movie, whether you like it or not, that's what's in the movie. So yeah.
I mean, haven't you noticed, Mike, that there is more nudity of women than men these days?
I can see where you're coming from with this, and
it's going out through all the years. Too.
I'm going to put it into a way from a man's perspective, but not totally.
Good.
If a guy is going to watch a movie with some naked people running around, the average guy does not want to see a guy running around if he's meat wagging in the wind, okay? He wants to see a naked female body running around. That's yours. You asked me a question, I'm trying to answer it.
Okay, go ahead.
Secondly, if there were guys running around their meat wagon, as it were, and the guy was extremely well endowed, it would make the guys feel a little bit self-conscious, say, mine's not as big as that. Now, same thing as the females that don't mind seeing a naked female body necessarily in the movie because they're not as sexually frustrated or weird or focused like guys are. It's okay. I see a nice bod. We say, I'm not trimmed down to get like that, get a waist like that. And then, hey, look what she's up to. Look at that guys he's with. So she doesn't look at the female the same way as a guy would. She might say, hey, I can trim down a bit. Hey, I'm as good as her. And hey, look at the guys he's with. Yeah. So, but you don't need to see the guy's wang thing. He's baloney, whatever you want to call it. He's sausage.
Yeah. I've seen. I've seen. What's his name? Who did? I saw a particular movie where it showed a little bit of a mixture of not just only the women's appearance,
Bits.
but showed a bit of the men's appearance.
Yeah, I mean, if it's relevant to the meal, I'm not a prude. I mean, however, if there's going to be a sex scene in a movie, to me, it has to be relevant. You don't have to see everything all the time. If you see them, they're coming together naked, you don't actually see a good DOP has it so everything is suggestive. You need to see the ladies' tits? Do you need to see her other bits? Do you need to see the guys? You know what? I mean, no. But it's you've got imagination. You know you've got a dick, and you know the female's body has got two of those, one of those. Do you actually have to see them?
Yeah, true.
No.
I mean, we do see the men's bottoms sometimes, but that's
the point
different.
Is, you don't have to see it all the time. You don't have to have ubiquitous sex scene in the movie just to, part of the formula, let's throw a sex scene in. I've said this before on some of the other podcasts. If it's relevant to the storyline, and in this case it was because they were attracted to each other. He met her, and they were built. There's a strong animal magnetism between the two of them, and they did come together.
Yeah, I did like when she approached him in the scene where she says that she's staying, and if he will have her, and he says, I'll have you.
No, it's not, if you'll take me, I'll take you. He did several times.
I like to think that in the epilogue that she may have gotten pregnant with his child. I like to think in my imagination.
Whatever. Anyway, so it's really hard to sex scenes in movies, but it doesn't always need to be so. But in this case, it was fine. I can't see what the problem was with the censors.
Me neither.
You didn't see a lot. The violence wasn't over the top. I've seen more in a Robin Hood movie. The old movies, Richard Green and stuff.
I think that more that I think about it, I think Vampire Circus had or would have had a little bit more nudity in that one.
Yeah, a
bit more.
So you get fun. The censorship guys get really weird, but I'm glad it's backed off a little bit. I still think. Yeah, the coding needs to be checked out a bit better for some movies, because I've seen some movies, they're rated and so on, and I think, well, is it appropriate for a young kid to see this type of movie? And you're going, well, it gets really hard sometimes.
Kid curiosity.
Yeah, but if you release a movie, okay, here's a movie, whatever it's going to be called, going to local theatre here, recommended for a general exhibition, but it might be a PG.
Point taken.
parental guidance recommended.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
But see, that's how they grade the movie sometimes is a little bit,
Yes.
and what works in one country doesn't work in another country. So you got to be relevant.
Yeah.
It was made in America and it goes to Australia or England or Europe. It needs to be reclassified.
Yeah, you may have heard me mention that Hammer has come back, but their movie styles are different. Even though it's they're moving up with the times, stuff like that.
They still doing location shoots or what?
I don't think so. I mean,
they're
they're probably
doing
copying the rest of the other studios, green screen, CGI, the whole
the
stuff.
point is that sometimes it's easy to go on location anyway. Green screen isn't cheap.
That's
There's
true.
a lot of post-editing involved and everything you've got to do.
That's a lot of work. I mean, quite different from actual, location shooting. Anyway, that's about. Let's rate this movie now.
I'm going to grade it. Now,
Blech.
well, I'm going to put it up there. Nine and a half, around there somewhere.
I'm going to give it
9.25. No.
I'm going to give it 9.5 too.
I'll make it 9.5 because I don't think there's anything lacking in the movie.
Me neither. I mean,
and it's good. It's good DOP. The director of photography did a good job. The director himself did a good job. The characters were believable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously compared to today's movies that was done 50 odd year ago, so the acting style is a little bit different. But apart from that, it was a fine movie.
Yes, and it's a great storyteller.
It's fun.
Yes.
Anyway, available for you people who want to brave the elements. Here, okay, eBay, plenty for sale.
Hooray!
Wait a minute. Amazon, it's rentable and plenty for sale. Two things. It's an old movie. Watch out for VHS tapes. Okay. If you don't want a VHS tape, do not buy it. There are some foreign versions I saw there in German and Italian. I don't buy them if I don't want them, okay? Now, and one other thing, some of the listings have the release date as 2003.
Ooh.
Not 1974. That's because that Blu-ray or whatever, or DVD, that release was done in 2003.
I see.
So just go and check. If you look around once around it, if you're looking for a Blu-ray, it's got the 2003 or 1974. It is the same one. Look at the picture on it and the actors. It should be the same actors, Horst Janson and John Carter and Caroline Munro. If you see those names, you got the right product.
I'm only relieved that they haven't made a remake of Captain Kronos.
I wouldn't touch it unless they could make it better. And I don't reckon, I mean, apart from some special effects and a bit more action scenes, I mean, it's not an action movie, but there's action in it. It's a horror movie with action in it. If you're going to make a straight action movie, horror's going to be put out. The horror storyline's going to suffer. You need to get the balance right. And I think they got the balance right in this movie.
I agree.
Yeah. Actually, are we going to do that other movie?
Oh, you mean the Vampire Circus one?
Yeah,
we're going to probably do it next time.
That's not a bad one either.
Because I am in a Hammer mood, and Hammer filmmaking was quite... I just like their style about it.
And somebody actually sent a message to Sarah saying, hey, why don't we do some more old movies? Well, 50 odd year ago, that's old movies enough, isn't it? Yeah, old enough,
Yeah, and so far we've already reviewed, say, several movies that have been released this year alone, so it's time to go back a step and
do some old ones. I still want to do
stuff.
a silent movie too, but I can't talk her into it yet. Yeah.
So it's time to go back a little bit, back in time to review some old Hammer movies.
Drop back 50 years, and then we might even go back to the 30s or 40s and see if we can find... Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily King Kong or anything, but something which...
We've already done that.
Well, no, it's something they might not have known. Everyone knows King Kong, it's been remade and seen, and but there might be something way back then, like, out of our collection here. I'd say, oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Well, I'm researching at the moment.
Are you? You're researching on the internet or going through my library?
Well, I'm actually looking up online at the moment to find anything that hasn't been drawn to my attention because it's either given the wrong, has not gotten a bigger audience reaction to it, or the fact it's been under the radar. As we've often discussed about movies, we often review that are under the radar.
Yes, and some don't get good reviews, and they did exceptionally well at the box office. Yeah. Or they get great reviews, and it stank at the box office.
Or it just got distributed to DVD, and no one's
no one knows about it. So we don't go too much by what the critics or the box office say, but we just incorporate it into the reviews. Because that's what it is. I mean, this is what the market said. Yeah. So we think it's good, and actually, it's really nice when the box office and the critics and us are all on the same page.
Yeah, I've even heard of a likely one that we might review for Halloween.
Oh,
but
peachy!
That one we'll have to wait for until actual Halloween.
It's gonna be a surprise.
Yeah. So I'll leave it to you guys to wait until then to see what we've come up with.
We might do several things for Halloween. We did it last year?
We did.
Yeah. We did trick or treat and different things. And
well, that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. We might find some Halloween things. And we won't necessarily mean Halloween, the movie franchise. I mean Halloween stuff.
Considering we've already done Halloween, I think.
Yeah, I think we did. Have we done Friday the 13th?
Yep.
Okay. What's
this
the other
year
one?
we
What's
did.
the other one? Nightmare on Elm Street?
Not yet.
Okay, we might throw a couple of Freddy's in there later.
Yeah, or at least something that London. What's his name is?
Robert Englund.
Robert Englund did.
England
did. Anyway, that's
Whatever.
about it for us tonight. Be sure to check it out, and do not get the VHS one.
Yeah, careful. Yeah, being older movies. Some of these older movies have still got some VHS copies running around in the marketplace.
Yeah, and
they might be new and or second hand, but it's still there. Yeah.
And while they may be good to get cheapy, it's always
but if you haven't got a VHS player, it ain't much stop getting it, is it?
Yeah, that's a good point. But it could be also very dusty from overuse.
But a lot of people don't have VHS players anymore.
That's true.
I have, but I got DVD players, VHS players. Everything's in my black box, my computer, tied in my home, my television media room. I can go there. I can watch anything, anywhere. It's really good.
So that's about it for us tonight, guys. So be sure to watch it and let us know in the comments how you guys feel about it.
I think you'll like it.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I can't think of anything else to say, but it's a good watch. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks for watching it, guys, and we'll see you guys for our next podcast. Bye for now.
See you guys.